Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce you to my guest today, Chris Palmore. Chris is a gratitude conductor, coach, creator, and author. He is the founder of GratitudeSpace and a host on GratitudeSpace Radio. He has a media and performing arts degree and a minor in video and broadcasting from Savannah College of Art and Design, and he's a proud member of the International Alliance of Theater and Stage Employees. He lives with his wife, Rosio, in Louisville, Kentucky. Please join me in welcoming Chris Palmore. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Tammy. Nice to see you again. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this, especially being that we're coming up on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, well, actually, what better time to have you around Thanksgiving, given that you are all about gratitude, right?
Absolutely. I want to talk to people all day long, and I do my best to, about gratitude.
So before we get to that, although maybe we will get to that sooner, let's talk about work from the inside out. So this podcast is all about all the transitions that people make throughout their lives, usually to go from their earlier years to their later years, not that you're at your later years yet, but to a point where they find even greater contentment, happiness, meaning, fulfillment, and find their way there. So tell us, what were some of your earlier years like, or where did you begin, and how might those have informed the place where you're at now?
For sure. Yeah. You know, my first passion when I was young was playing the guitar and singing and songwriting. So that was my first, the first thing I really had a passion for. And just, looking back on those years, I can feel like, you know, knowing what I know now it was my way of like almost getting into flow, you know, when you're working on an instrument, when you can get out of your head and it's just you and a tool, right? And you're just, that's it, right? And it's a very simple thing that's very powerful because it allows you just to be present. And then, you know, when you're creating songs or singing or thinking these things, and I loved it. And it was part of what I was doing when I went to college, you know, when I was 21, you know, that was part of going to Savannah College of Art and Design. I had this, my first dream was to be a rock star. And then I realized that wasn't going to happen. And then I had iterations of what could I still do with that idea in mind, you know, and even so much as, you know, I feel like I definitely drove that train as far as it could possibly go. And that's a whole other podcast for another time. But it allowed me to, I put it all, absolutely all on the line where I basically, you know, it's the thing where you get on the ship and then you get to the other land and you burn the ships. And I did that. And
what does that mean exactly? I mean, my imagination is going a little wild, but, you know, I have this image of the starving musician or artist who loves it so much that they're living out of their car and they're, you know, doing gigs, but they're not really getting paid much, but they love it so much. And then finally one day they say, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, there's, I mean, for where I'm talking about is coming from a true belief, and the type of belief where you're incredibly irresponsible with everything because you have such a strong belief in what you're doing. You know, I didn't know it at the time, but I was actually going through hypermania. So that's a whole other, you know, again, that's a whole other story, but, you know, just towing the line so far with the belief structure where you've basically, you know, flunked out of school, getting evicted, you know, you've maxed your credit cards. I like how I'm saying you, like there's like a third person here. And fortunately in that situation, after I'd burned, basically, like I said, like you burn the ship after you get on land, fortunate enough that my mom and dad, they still loved me and allowed me to, come home and have a place and rebuild my life. And that was at the age of, I think, 22. So we're talking about almost 20 years ago. So that's, so I've gotten that out of my system, to say the least. But, as far as where we're at today in the story, and the reason you and I connected is that, my gratitude story started in the fall of 2013, where I would consider, I was living my best life. I had, I was married at the time, and I, had a decent job, and, how else to say it? Life was good. I definitely, it's good now, but there was no, how do you say, we'll get back around to saying just life was good. And I was in a place and I heard a podcast. I heard Adam Carolla talk on his podcast, talk about how he felt that birthdays were appreciation trophies, and that if you wanted your birthday to be about something, you should either make it about an achievement or about something else. And I took that into about someone else. So my birthday was coming up, and I decided that I was going to do something for my mom. So that was the idea. I was like, okay, I'm going to do something for my mom. So, fast forward 8 weeks later, it's December 30th. I get up really early. It's probably 4 a.m. and I sit down and I write out what was essentially a gratitude letter to my mother. And when I was finished writing it, I put it on my computer. I put it on Facebook. I put it on her Facebook page, and then I left it. And I did that for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted her to find it, so I wanted it to be a surprise. And two, I wanted other people to read it, because I have absolutely no shame for how much I love my mother. And what I was saying was nothing I was wanting to hide underneath a rock. I had no desire for it to be just a silent thing, And there's nothing wrong with just talking to people and sharing your gratitude, but making it public, you allow some magic to happen when you what I consider now, you call it gratitude art, when you create something in gratitude that is digital. At that point it becomes something else. It becomes more than just a voice that can dissipate and never be heard again.
Right.
So mid-morning comes around. Normally I get a call from my parents. They'd sing happy birthday to me. I'm looking at I'm looking at the clock. There's no call. So I go, something strange here. So I decide I'm going to call my dad, because I still want my mom to find this letter. I don't want to talk, so I call his cell phone and I get on the phone with him, and, he's wished me happy birthday. And then I immediately pivoted to, has mom read the letter? And he said to me that she had read the letter and that she needed time with it, that she couldn't speak to me right now. And to give a little more backstory, my mom is somebody I talked to the day before. It's somebody at a very young age I had no problem kissing on the cheek and telling her I love her. So for him to tell me that this letter that I just put together, that, spare the moment, that morning, just words on a page, had left her speechless, was something that even whenever I talk about this still fascinates me, because I still don't understand how that happened. And if I tried to do it, it never would have happened. It's not something that you can plan for. It's not something you can even shoot for. It's what happened. And, later that day we did talk, and it was a moment in our relationship that just strengthened the relationship that was already incredibly strong. It was something that, that just made us closer, which is a phenomenal thing that gratitude can gift to anybody if they truly want to take the gratitude they have for somebody and let them know about it, and let the receive, the gift and the giver there, connecting it in a sincere way. We all have that option. So that was December 30th. And, I didn't foresee what was about to happen. My mom's cancer came back shortly after, and 4 months to the day later, she was gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, what happened was, after that was, my dad asked me if I wanted to speak at her funeral, and I didn't. I had no desire to speak at her funeral. I didn't feel like I needed to get up there and be an emotional in front of a group of people. It just wasn't wasn't anything I felt like doing, but I kept thinking about this letter, right? I kept thinking about this letter. I thought about how people had seen it online and how my mom, my dad had read it, and my sister had read it, and just the effect it had, and the story behind it and the connection. So what I did is I had my cousin read the letter for me at my mom's funeral. So, I've given this a lot of thought. It's the amazing thing about, creating gratitude art is that it stacks. So it's a really amazing thing that has to do with gratitude is, I wrote the letter. I had my own stack. My mom read the letter. She had her own stack. We came together. That was its own stack. My dad reading had his own stack. My sister reading had her own stack. And then now I had a whole other stack because I'm actually sitting at my mom's funeral and I hear my words being read back to me where it's like, I'm going to tell you I love you more this year. I'm going to spend more time with you. I'm going to make you more proud. And it's April 30th of 2014. And that's the end of it. Those thoughts. So it was very bittersweet in the sense that I was very content that I wrote this letter and I had this experience, but at the same time, just the finality of obviously being at her funeral and not having any idea when I wrote that letter that any of this would happen, because my mom was super mom. And I really did believe that, that she was going to live a really long time, even when she got re-diagnosed. I had faith just because that's how she taught me. And she's, she was a superwoman, she totally was. Up until the very last moment, she was a superwoman, it was her body giving out. It was not her mind at all, it's at that point, she didn't have any control over it, and it was going to do what it was going to do. And she definitely did all she could do to stop it. And that something, that unfortunately, sometimes that's just not enough. So after she passed away and having this another experience with her, with the funeral, the following year I came around and my birthday was coming up again. So I decided I was going to do it again. I wanted to do it for my father. So I recreated the scenario. I got up early and I wrote a letter to my father. And this letter was completely different from the letter before. This was a much more dramatic letter. I realized that now I'm a single child parent. I have one parent now. Even looking back on it, my father, honestly, perspective is a big part of gratitude, and perspective is a really good part of grief too. And if you, in seeing my father go through this, some of the most dramatic moments are honestly thinking of him. It really put my pain in perspective, because she was my mother, but to him, she was his life. And the fact that he still, in the letter he said, is the fact that you still get up and you're moving around and you laugh and that you're still a caring person just means so much to me. He's like an anchor. So, it's funny. We're talking right now. He's actually taking a nap in the other room.
Oh yeah.
Maybe hearing me now. Yeah. He came over for lunch and we had lunch and he was tired. So he's in the other room taking a nap. So, fast forwarding, I had a great experience again, and I got to keep in mind about our time here, Tammy. So,
no worries.
Basically, I had after I did this a second time, I had this amazing experience. I decided I had a little nugget of an idea. I was like, what if I could initiate other people to have this experience? And that was, that was the nugget of the idea. So I started getting work on that idea. And I spent a couple months creating a website, talking to every day to people. It became the creation of this website, sharing my story, how am I going to do this, became my daily gratitude practice. I was literally immersing myself in this every day, for hours. It was my flow state. It consumed all aspects of my life. And it was very healthy because I was building something and I was thinking in gratitude, and I was thinking about the stories and thinking about, how can I get people to do this? How can I assist people to have this experience? So, the amazing thing is I put that out into the world. I worked on it, and then I was gifted an amazing experience because of all that. And that's where I'm going to get to this next part of the story. And that's kind of where the book's going to, so we can pivot a little bit. The website's going to launch on a Friday. My best friend, Kate, her birthday's coming up. I asked her if she'll write a letter. She says, sure. At the same time that week, I talked to my mentor. I tell him I want to go I was like, I'd really like to go somewhere and have an experience with this, be alone somewhere, but I can't afford to go to a cabin. I couldn't chill out $200 or $300 to go do it. And, my mentor and friend Rick said, there is a monastery in Bardstown, Kentucky, and they do allow people to do retreats there. And I took a pause and I was like, you're telling me there's monks literally 45 minutes away from where I'm right now, where I lived most of my life. There's a monastery. And he's like, yes. And I go, okay. Didn't know about that. Right. It's called Abbey of Gethsemane. I get online. I email a monk. He gets back to me. He says that, well, we do male retreats one weekend and females the other one. Fortunately, this was going to be a weekend for the males. They did have room. They take donations. I emailed him back and got booked a space to go to the monastery to have this experience.
The timing of this was this in 2014 that you were working on?
No, this is 2015 because 2000. Okay, so it was the end of 2013 when I wrote the letter going into 2014 with my mom, and then I wrote the letter to my dad at the end of 2014. Started everything in 2015.
Right. Okay, so when you say you started everything, I just want to back up just a little bit. So even though I know you're trying to move this ahead because you're worried about time, don't worry about that. So. Okay. Because what you're doing is you're building a story here. You're building a stack right now, right? And so I want to make sure that our listeners know and that I know how this grew, because you're doing such an amazing job of almost giving us the experience that you had of this starting from within you, right? The letter you wrote to your mom and your relationship with your mom, and then bringing that to your dad and having that grow your relationship with your dad. Clearly you got, deepening relationships with both of them out of this. And then you decided, what if I could bring this to other people and have other people have these experiences? I'm curious, since you put these letters out. Did you put the letter out to your dad also on Facebook?
Yes, I did. I had him find that in a similar way. I was using, at the time, I had a different website that I put it on so it could be in its own space. Unfortunately, when everything got later on in my story, when I go from letters@gratitude.org to GratitudeSpace, that was a different server. And the guy that was hosting the other server, that letter to my father is lost forever.
Oh. Well,
but that's my fault. I take responsibility.
Okay. Well, that is unfortunate, and that is very unfortunate. And I'm curious to know what other kinds of, were there other external responses, reactions, feedback, vibes that came your way that told you this was something that other people needed, wanted, had to experience? In other words, as you've described this to this point, it sounds like, well, I've had this amazing, experience with this. This has been so fulfilling for me. This has been so important for me in my life. I want other people to have this experience. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, that's great. That's great for you, Chris. How do you know that other people want to have this experience? How did you know then that other people want to have this experience? Did you just assume it? Or did you get feedback? Like, what made you decide to create this whole, new empire of gratitude letters and things?
I guess to speak to that, after my mom passed away, I reposted the letter to her online and allowed people to connect with it on a whole other level. So again, I'm obviously speaking from the experience of me writing my letter. I'm experiencing me sharing it, and then I'm experiencing other people experiencing it also. So,
so what was that like for you, and what kinds of things were you getting back from other people that, in other words, what I'm getting at is you had an experience, not just of your mother's response to the letter and your experience of discussing it with her, but then you had the experience of other people's response to the letter to your mother. Is that right?
Yes, I did. And that was because after she passed away, I put it online, and then people, what they did is they related to it because they loved my mother. And then they share. What happened was it allowed a space for them to share their love for my mother. So, again, you get the ball rolling. You can have people, appreciate people, if you know, how to say this. For example, I did a podcast last week with a new friend named Steph, and we decided to call it Gratitude Bomb, because I'm thinking of all different ways to do series on the podcast and how do I initiate people to share gratitude and how do we get all these connections, right? So we decided we were going to do one where her mom was coming up and her birthday was coming up, and we are going to make it called Gratitude Bomb, because in that idea I can do anything with anybody for any reason for any day of the week. It's like a very open idea. So it's not like birthday gratitude, it's a gratitude bomb. So, I set up, she just mentions my mom's birthday's coming up, and I go, we were in a Zoom call. We're just talking, right? I go, well, if you want to, we could do a podcast, and we could set this up for her as a, surprise to her, doing, and this is me because I'm recreating what I did with my mother, but I'm using the podcast as the medium, which I love so freaking much. So I get on there with Steph. We do the podcast. She says some really beautiful things. Her husband steps in, says some really beautiful things. Her daughter steps in, says some really beautiful things. And she's talking about her mom all along. And I'm sitting there going, these things you're saying so much resonate with me, and I totally feel it. I speak to it. I go, I'm living, because she was saying that, the reason I can have right now this time off to pursue my business is because my mom is helping me. And I go, I'm specifically living in this condo right now because my father helped me. I'm like, so I know from experience that I'm telling you that story because I know from experience that when you get in the presence of reading or seeing or hearing someone, it becomes a reflective process. So when she's sharing love for her mother, I feel it. I feel it for my dad, and you can feel it for a friend, and it's a reflective thing. It's a powerful thing. And I've given this a lot of thought, and honestly, every time I do a podcast and I talk with somebody, I find more things to be grateful for. So the great thing about having the conversation is with others and putting it in a space where people can share is it's reflection. You can't have this experience alone. To me, honestly, and I know I feel like I'm jumping massive story things here, but to transcend gratitude, the highest form to me is when you decide you want to be a catalyst for gratitude. And that's where the composer in me comes out, because I just want to be a catalyst. And I've thought about this a lot recently, and I love sharing it. It's like, there's a lot of ways to be a catalyst for gratitude. Being kind to somebody is a catalyst for gratitude. Allowing them your focus is a catalyst for gratitude. Just listening is a catalyst for gratitude. And obviously we could go straight forward to what I do, right? I go into groups and I set up microphones and I ask people specifically, who in your life are you grateful for, right? I'm like, there's no magician there, right? There's no I'm right up on top of it. Or you could just be giving a sandwich to somebody, or just saying hi, opening a door. There's so many different ways, forms of kindness, and kindness is a massive breath of gratitude. It allows it to enter the space. So I know what's going on there. I want to do that all day long. That's what I was initially doing. I knew that I loved what was happening at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just knew that I wanted to somehow. I knew this was good. I knew that it would always be good, and I knew that it would connect people. It would assist in making connections stronger, and I knew that if I could capture it, right, because we're talking about gratitude art, that art has the potential to initiate more of it. And that's really, and continuing with my story at the monastery. So I get to the monastery. I'm going to cut through a lot of stuff. Okay. So I'm at the monastery. There was a blizzard. I did go. I ended up being the only person in the monastery. So I wanted the isolation and I got it. So the next day, it's just like me and the monks, but they're in a different building. They have services every 4 hours, but I was literally, it was isolation. Like when I think about the monastery that day, it's almost like the beginning of the end of The Shining. When you show up and it's all white, all I could do is like hear the snow crumpling under my feet and like the wind, and then vastness on a hill. Wow. Right. I got to go back, right? Unfortunately, COVID. Anyways, but I'm going to. I'm telling you. So, anyways, I want to paint this picture. I get myself. I've done all this work. I have a room with its own bathroom. I'm sitting in my room, small bed. I've got my laptop there. The letter comes in, and this is my home. No, what's the word I'm looking for? This is my wow moment, right? Or the moment that completely changes my life. I read Kate's letter, and I get to the end of it, and I'm crying. And I don't know why I'm crying. It's the strangest feeling ever. I've never had this feeling before. I would love to talk to other people that have. I start going through a checklist, right? Because I'm like, what's going on here? What's going on in my body? What am I feeling here? I go, well, I'm not crying because it's a beautiful letter. That's not why. I'm not crying because I know Kate. I'm not crying because it's funny or it's well written. It's all those things, but that's not what's making me cry. And in an instance, it clicks, and I realize why I'm crying, and it completely changed my life. I realized that the letter that she wrote, that it solely exists because I asked her to write it. And that letter it has been online for years, but later this month, it's going to be in a book called Dear Gratitude, an anthology.
Right.
That letter that completely changed my life. And it allowed me, I wanted to tell that story because everything I'm doing now is doing that. I just want to create the moments. And I realized later, I know what's harder and easier. I know what's, you know what I mean? Like it's a big ask to have somebody write a letter, but I'll tell you what is easy. If I get in front of you and just ask you what you're grateful for, and I got a camera, did it, happened. You know what I mean? The good, your thought process of who am I grateful for, you saying it, vocalizing it, right? All those neurons going on, all the connections, it all happens, right? And that's what I realized. That's all I want to do all day long. And everything I've done the last 5 years, and that's crossing the country, doing tours, hundreds of videos, dozens of interviews, doing podcasts as much as I can all day long. The book, all of it is in support of me just creating, if you mind, an atmosphere, being that catalyst for somebody to come to the moment, to just ask themselves, what am I grateful for?
Yeah.
Or to realize they have gratitude because it's with them all the time. They just haven't noticed it. It's always been in the room. It's always there.
Yeah. And bringing it to the surface so that they can really be in that moment, be in that flow that you're describing. Yeah. It's
right.
Powerful. It's very powerful. I understand what you're saying about that. I am curious, before you arrived at that moment, or even before you arrived at the chain of events that occurred even before that retreat, what were you doing for work, and what was occupying most of your life or your daytime hours between being a rock star, or the ambition of being a rock star, and then starting to write gratitude letters? What were you doing at that time?
Well, this goes back to, at the beginning when I said that I'm a proud member of the International Alliance of Theater and Stage Employees. Yeah. So that's being part of I.A.T.S.E and that union allows me to be very flexible in my schedule. So because I'm in a union and the way it's set up, I have a call steward, and depending on what work is, I can either say yes or no. And I was in a fortunate enough place where I could pursue this at great lengths at one time or another, depending on when work was and with my financial situation. So, so 2015, I'm trying to think of how much, again, I can only remember getting up really early, being at the Starbucks at 6 a.m. when they opened, and being there for like 5 hours. And it was probably 5 days a week. I would do that because there would be normal people I'd meet, and I'd just be in the space, and I would, just kind of create and read and work on the website and talk to people. So I was in a very fortunate situation where I could afford at that time not to work full time. And I.A.T.S.E has always allowed me to be flexible. So that goes back to, I do not want a 9-to-5 job. I've never wanted it. I've had it obviously at some point or another, but I like the flexibility. I'm really great to go in for 4 hours or work 18 hours, if it's, music festival where I'm running a camera all day long, or if it's going in and setting up big construction pieces, or if it's just going in for an hour and unloading a truck and getting a 4-hour minimum. I like the flexibility, and I'm so grateful. And that was part of me going to Savannah College of Art and Design. The benefit was that the union, while I was there, opened back up the local chapter. And that's how pivoting from wanting to be a rock star to realizing, I can assist in production. And that's where production came in the back, being part of the productive side opposed to the performance side was all, that's what happened in Savannah, Georgia. So I was in a very, I'm a very grateful and unique situation that I was in that allowed me to pursue this untethered.
Yeah.
I wasn't spending a lot of money, obviously, doing it, but I wasn't making much money because I was just, in the creative process. I was allowed to do that. So I was in a very unique scenario where I didn't have to engross me. Maybe normally people would work as much as they could to not think about the depression and think about the grief. What I did is I took my grief and I literally turned it into a positive thing. And grief's, I would never speak for someone else's grief, but honestly, with me and grief, it's, obviously you could say, I told you my mom passed away. I mentioned cancer. I could get into some really ugly stuff and I could live that right now with you. I could do that. It's a choice. Yeah. Obviously it's been many years, but at the same time, I'd rather go, the flip side of her passing away is this, for 35 years, I had a wonderful woman in my life that loved me so freaking much, that really wanted me to be here. She really did. I wrote about this in my book. I have a letter called Dear Gratitude. I was going to read it to you, but I don't have so much time, but, it made me think about, how much my mom loved me. My parents had a miscarriage a year before where the boy was alive for 24 hours and passed away. And they really still wanted another child enough that they decided they would get pregnant enough again. And then the foreknowledge of having that premature baby, the new doctor said, why don't we sew you up? So my mom put stitches in her body before I was even born so that I would arrive on time.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And that really speaks to that right there speaks to the 35 years and just her being there for me. So I know that I'm very fortunate. I know that people aren't born, what's the flip side of that, right? What's the flip side? You could be born to a mother that passes away. You could be born to a mother that didn't want you. There's a lot of ways that can go. I know I'm fortunate. I speak from being fortunate. And I'm not saying that somebody can't have a great life and love and if with these other things, but I'm just speaking from my perception of going, I could think about all the bad, there is bad, but there was so much good. There was so much good. And the reason that people are so, they're so broken down over it is because there was so much good.
Well, I was just going to say something like that, Chris, that oftentimes, I lost my mom when I was in my mid 40s, and I remember feeling very, very sad, but also very grateful. And still to this day. And really the same thing you're talking about. It's like, I was grateful for the sadness because I had something to be sad about. I was sad about the fact that I had this loss that I was sad about, and I think that, I'd rather have something to be sad about than to be in a position where I'm just saying, glad that's over with,
right.
Or feeling incomplete or feeling like, angry or, whatever, regretful in some way. And I know that those things happen to people too, but these are all part of the fullness of life. So it's not about choosing one thing. We tend as humans, I think, sometimes to want to have to choose one or the other. It has to be either good or bad, when in fact it's a both and, right? It can, you can be grieving and still be joyful at the same time. Just because your mom may not be here with you now doesn't mean that you're not still benefiting from the kind of relationship you had with her. It's not that she's not gone completely. She's not physically here, but you get to take some of that with you. So it's, again, I agree with you. It's all a matter of perspective. And I also want to thank you also for just sharing, what you were doing for a day job too, because, it's also a part of you. And I'm sure as people are listening to this, they might be saying, well, that's great that he went to a monastery and that he's writing gratitude letters, but how does he keep a roof over his head? And, how, I think there are practical matters that people are curious about as well, even though it sounds so like you are living so on purpose, and so deep into, a sense of meaning and, a sense of meaning and purpose, really. And so I'm curious now, here we are in 2020. By the time this will still air in 2020, but I'm sure there will be people listening to this well into 2021 and beyond. So take us through the next 5 years. You started the first website in 2015, and it sounds like it's evolved into yet another different website. What kinds of things have you been doing with this wonderful journey you've been on?
Thanks, Tammy. Yeah, I realized I had another experience. I set up something in New York City, Washington Square Park in 2015. It was a couple of weeks after the anniversary of my mom's passing. And I made this big to-do about it. And I posted all this stuff and had pictures made and this, that, and that, right? And I showed up in New York City, which isn't my home, and on this time with all this prep work. And absolutely, there were a lot of people in the park, and nobody was there for me. And it's a hard lesson to learn. But I was sitting in this. I'd taken myself on a journey, right? I'd put myself in play. I'd put a lot of energy in this, and I'm sitting there going, something has to happen here. Something has to happen here.
What was it that you set up? You said these pictures and these. What was it?
I was hoping people were going to show up so we could write letters. Like literally, people were going to write letters, because that was still at the time was my focal. But nobody was there. We had the chalk stuff, and nobody was there. And I'm sitting there going, something's got to happen. Something's got to happen. And I had my iPhone with me, and I saw that there were a group of students that were doing pay so much money, throw a pie at them, So I decided I walked up to this group that was raising money for a charity. I said, look, I'd love to give some money to your charity, throw some pies, but I'd like to ask you guys what you're grateful for. So at this point, I had my phone. Again, it was me, and I engaged this group of people that were there helping for charity. Asked them with just simplistically, I said, what 3 things are you grateful for? Or what are you grateful for today? And over a period of the next hour, I got 20 gratitude videos. And I realized again, like I was telling you before, it's an ask where people overthink. If you say, write a letter, getting a video is it's done. I've created the moment. I've created the moment. The magic occurred. And then I had I had my art. And that moment changed everything. It changed my whole format of thinking about things, because again, what is the easiest inroad to get what I want? What I want is I want to create the moment. I want the moment to happen. I want to be part of the process of creating the moment. And that's initiating the moment. Again, it's not about me at all. It isn't the magic of Chris. It's just, I want to somehow initiate that magic from the other person. It's really the other person. If I'm by myself, it's literally nothing. So from that experience, I set out to do what I called the Punching Depression Tour. So I set up this event where I would go up to Chicago with my dad and some friends, see my favorite band, U2, get on a train, cross the entire country to Seattle. I met with groups in Seattle, did videos. I went down to San Francisco, met with groups in Oakland, did videos, went down to Los Angeles and did videos, met with groups, and also then in Las Vegas and met with groups. So that changed. That's actually when GratitudeSpace.com launched. That's when everything kind of my format of thinking, I want to do videos. I want to initiate videos and share them in different social networks. So that tour completely accelerated everything I was doing. It completely put me on the road, allowed me to see this process. After we were done, I think there's almost 200 videos that were created from those events, and the connections were made. So fast forward, we're from then, I decided, I ended up doing interviews with people with big social media followings, long form interviews to the website. I did that for a few years, had some other events, and then moving up to this year, I'd started doing these interviews again more on a regular basis. And my mentor, Thomas, said, he just said, you want to, he asked me specifically, he's like, why do you continue to do this? He's like, what is the outcome you want? Because, I hadn't been asked that in a while. I think it's a great question. And I told him, well, all I'm doing is trying to create this moment. I just want to create this moment as much as I can, and we got back to a very similar conversation we had 5 years ago where he's like, you need a book. And I go, I know I do. And he goes, well, how about this? He says, why don't you, for the next 6 months, just say you're going to write 500 words a day and see what happens. So I go, Thomas, I can do that. And, I start writing in January, and through that process, long story short, is this book that's coming out in a couple months. And during this process, I launched my, GratitudeSpace Radio, which completely changed the game. Again, like my trip to, you had the trip to New York, you had the trip out West, game changer, right? The podcast completely changed the game for me, because I was doing long form interviews, written up interviews, right? Which is just like asking somebody to write a letter in gratitude. Now, cool thing about a podcast is, and the fact we live in the day and age of Zoom, is I can get somebody on. They don't have to overthink. We get on together. I get to have a conversation, not a answer question interview. And at the same time, the audio and the video is being captured. I literally felt like I was walking around with two stones, trying to spark fire, and somebody handed me a Zippo. Like the difference before, it's like the videos, it was like difficult for me to get videos. Now I'm literally drowning in gratitude videos, because I have more, I do the podcast as much as I can. I have so many freaking moments that I didn't have time to go collect all of them. I'm just initiating them, and then we have more, and And my hope one day is that I'll have an assistant can go back and pluck more out, or maybe I have more time, I can go back, but it's a good problem to have.
So would you say the distinction then in terms of what you call a game changer is the difference between asking somebody to write a letter or to answer questions, is the difference is the exchange and the interaction versus the one way, just tell me this, write this down. It's more the exchange of ideas, or the flow of just interaction between two people about it, and what springs out of that.
Yeah, it's they don't overthink it. See, that's the problem when I say, will you write a letter of gratitude? You overthink it. It's complete. But for example, if we were to sit here and we had time, and I go through, hey, who in your life are you grateful for, Tammy? You don't overthink it. You just speak it. And the magic again of like my podcast is I like to go layers with that question, because people have go-tos. And I love the fact when I get to the third or fourth layer, it's not somebody that's always sitting here. That's and right. Then they actually think of somebody, not, you know what I mean? Somebody occurs to them opposed to who they feel. Now, don't get me wrong, go-tos are good, but who they feel they should say, right? And don't get me wrong, those are good people. But I get to, when you ask the third or fourth time, we actually get a new memory. And it's so exciting when somebody gets in that space. I love that. And it could only be done if we do this. I can't do that. I cannot do that either way.
It's, I can really appreciate what you're saying. It reminds me of when I invite new guests to this podcast, and some people will say, well, do you have a list of questions you can give me ahead of time? Or, how can I prepare? And I will often say, well, there are some typical questions I ask, and I'm happy to share those with you. But honestly, I may or may not ask them. And really, it's just a very conversational kind of thing.
Right.
And we'll just see where it goes. And, for some people that makes them very uncomfortable. They really like to be prepared. They want to know what's going to happen. And I don't do it to make them uncomfortable, but I like what you're saying about this, because I think when you can just engage somebody and, maybe start the conversation in one place and then see where it unfolds, you're going to get something out of that you could never get otherwise. And based on what you're saying, it's enormously powerful, and it really does help take somebody to a place they would never have gone before, that's really going to make a difference in their lives. Tremendous difference in their lives.
Oh yeah, I just love when I get to that moment, I hear that story, because it's really, like I said, it had just occurred. It wasn't preloaded. It's magic. Like it's literally, I feel like I'm not pulling a rabbit out of my hat or anything. I'm just figured out a way to get people. If you go a couple layers deep, we get away from the time. So it's really it's magical, and the podcast allowed me to do that.
You get rid of all the filters, and you're just talking from the heart, really.
Right. And I tell people, I'm like this, I tell them, like, the podcast, like, this is what I love more than anything. Just the communication. It's so great that we can share this. That's the icing on the cake. I just want to eat more cake. And that's why I realized new ways and easy ways to engage people, to get them on the podcast, to share gratitude, make it directional. Let's have this land somewhere. Let's make this art together. Because it's the dragon I chase. Honestly, that moment, me creating that moment, is what it fuels me, does more for me than anything else in my entire life. It does so much for me. And that's why every day I'm doing it. And the great thing is, when I do it, I am capturing it, so I can literally watch it back. So think about when I start editing this stuff, I'm actually watching them. I'm getting to be another creative process of the magic.
I just had a thought. I bet you're already thinking about this. Some kind of a film or documentary.
It's interesting you say that. The Punching Depression tour was supposed to be a documentary, and that's why I have all that footage. And actually, my second book I'm going to start working on, as soon as this one is officially done, is going to be called Punching Depression, Gathering Gratitude. I think that's what it's going to be called, because just like the book Dear Gratitude, where I initiated 50 people to write letters of gratitude and essays, and people that have passed away. So the book, what I was saying, for the book does, to tell people about Dear Gratitude, it's my story, which I've shared a lot of it with you here, but it's also other people sharing what they're grateful for, because gratitude means so much gratitude is different for everybody. And there's a little bit, and if you don't really resonate with my story, I guarantee you're going to resonate with some of these stories. You just have to. There's the spectrums there. It's not Chris's color, it's the spectrum. And the great thing about that tour is I went out, I captured all these moments. I have hundreds of moments on digital moments, right? So that book's going to tell the journey, but it's going to have all the stories are already there. All the gratitude has already been said and captured. And ideally, I would like, if I could find somebody to come on board and they wanted to, like, interview me, and we could throw the videos in. I'm putting that out to anybody that's listening to Tammy's podcast. I would love to talk to anybody about it, because I already have the footage, a lot of footage. And it would just come down to me. And I could even, if somebody wanted to assist, I can interview myself. I can sit in a place and do the one-on-one. So I have all that, Tammy. That's totally doable. And book 2, that's where I'm going with it.
Okay. I think I might know a couple of people. I can point you. You might even know them already. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be a conversation. That's for sure. And I appreciate that. I definitely already have. I've done a lot of legwork, and it is a good story. And again, it's a good story because of all the gratitude and it's places, it's being there. If I'm the Castro district with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, Sister Roma, the most photographed drag nun in the history of the world, with her silhouettes 7 feet tall, walking the Castro district, collecting videos, then going to, like, a drag bar and then getting videos there, these are very unique experiences, and all these places are very unique, and they're wonderful.
Yeah. And yet there's some commonalities that just connect people, aren't there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I really believe, Tammy, that I know everyone has something to be grateful for. I feel like everyone's got this stuff sitting right here, and nobody ever asked them. And that's the amazing thing about when you ask somebody what they're grateful for, you've actually giving them space to vocalize their love, because everyone has it. It's right there. They just need to be triggered to ask it. You ask in a comfortable situation, and the magic just happens. It just does. It's ready to pour out. It's just people don't do this, but it's magical.
Let me ask you something. We're going to wrap up in a moment, but let me ask you something. So when somebody does, answer the question, what are they grateful for? What do you think? And you say, that's where the magic happens. What do you think becomes available to them then?
I think that it's, for example, I've come up with people that are obviously have been in very emotional states, and it allows them to realize that life's not that bad. When you allow somebody, so for example, if somebody's caught in their head, that's, the thing is your mind can only kind of cover one thing at a time. So we can obviously choose, like going back to my situation, you can think about the bad stuff. We all have bad stuff, and we can live in that. You can literally live in that. But when somebody says, hey, tell me something good, and then you tell yourself something good, you're literally being put in a state of gratitude. Gratitude allows you to be present. So at that moment, you become present, which means I'm not thinking about all this garbage. I'm not thinking about the bad stuff. I'm not worried about the future right now, right? And I like to talk to people about that. Obviously, it's like the future is just an idea, everybody. It's an idea. And as soon as you get there, it's not the future. And if you're always thinking about the future, you're not in the present. And if you're always in the past, you're not in the present. And the present is all we have. It's literally all we have. It is the best. Every moment is really a unique experience. It'll never happen again. And that may be tough to swallow, and you may be bored at times, but it's still true. So if you can figure out triggers to get yourself into the moment, gratitude is a massive trigger to bring yourself into the present moment.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a really, really good point. And so if you were to give somebody a piece of wisdom or insight from your perspective as they are, let's say, embarking on a significant transition, or they're thinking, this podcast is a lot of people listening to it are thinking about what's next for them. What would you point them in the direction of? Because you've spoken today about a number of different points where, even though it sounds like you were on the same trajectory, you spoke about how you took some different twists and turns here and there, and that those really were turning points for you. So I'm curious, what might you advise somebody else to do, or at least suggest to them in terms of looking to make a transition?
I would someone's got to kind of figure out what they want to do. So for instance, if we go back to my story, right? I was like, okay, I want to launch a website and I want to initiate people to share gratitude. So you got to figure out, obviously, what is this new venture you want to do, right? And then you've got to put some, and then you've got to take action, right? So in my situation, just to parallel that was me working on the website and talking to people about it. Obviously, conversations lead to more ideas. Especially if you're creating, I think conversations, period. You should talk to as many people as you can about your new idea and what you're doing, because it'll allow you to get other perspectives and hear things you never would.
Yeah.
I think those are two and then you need to build action steps. So obviously you need to decide habitually, and it could be as simple as, okay, for 5 minutes a day, I'm going to do this. Everyone has 5 minutes a day. So start with 5 minutes a day, because if you think I got to do an hour a day, you're not going to stick to it. It's just like going to the gym or working out or any type of transition. Just get yourself, I have a dry erase boards here. Get yourself a checklist. Say, I'm going to sit and meditate in this idea for 10 minutes a day. Something simplistic you're doing daily. Then the last kind of thing with this, I would say, is even though you have an idea where you want to end up, you got to be flexible. You got to have an open mind to go, okay, maybe, I'm not going to end up where I want to end up. Okay. Maybe it's going to be a different place. And I love my friend Bobby, my mentor, told me years ago, he said, just think of it as this, it's either this or something better. So keep in your mind that even though you have this image in your head of whatever it is, and I almost, a really good analogy would be like, okay, this is the analogy that 10 years ago, say you decided, okay, I'm going to start saving my money up because I want to buy a place in Hawaii. Okay, so fast forward, you save 10 years, fast forward. Now, what if in 10 years from now, you're just not a beach person? Maybe to you as you want to, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, why or maybe you're not in the same type of architecture, right? So it's like you had an idea. I'm going to put money down on a house for the next 10 years. And you decide, I don't even, I want a 1 story. It's a 2 story. I don't even know. I'm just giving the analogy of you have this idea in your head, and just be flexible with where it takes you. And the most important thing is to get started and see what happens. Whatever you got to get in your mind. You got to go, you might have to go, what's the checklist? What's stopping me from starting? Because like my friend Bobby says, someday is not a day on the calendar. His book, The Sunday Solution, he's like, it's not a day. He's like, you look on leap year. There's no day called someday. You're either started or you haven't. And most people overthink it, just like think about the letters, right? They overthink it. They don't do it. It's inaction. Just get started and just figure out simplistically how to get started. Be flexible. And who knows, maybe on your way there, you decide you don't even want to go there, and that's okay. But if you don't start, you won't know that.
Right.
And along the way, who knows who you're going to meet?
Right.
What ideas are going to be shared? Who's going to come in your path? Inaction, it means you sit nowhere. You don't have the experiences. You don't meet the people. You don't have the conversations. You don't really know where you're going. And that's completely true with me. I'm always about asking. I love having conversations. I love to have ideas shared. And I'm not sold on where this ends up. There's a whole other story, the second part of my story, where I did put all the eggs in the basket again, and I did burn the bridge, and we don't have time for that, but it made me realize this. And I think this would be a good, and then I want to plug the book one more time. I just want to say that, with me, I realized that this conducting idea is, I know what it does for me. Right. And bottom line is, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. Now, if I can make a living out of it and I can make it be something I can do full time, that's great. But if I can't, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it regardless. Really, it comes down to how much am I going to do it?
Right.
Because of what it does for me. It may be, I get to do the podcast twice a week and I work full time. That's fine. I'm completely content because it's what it does for me. And I hope people can think of themselves and what you want. How is that fulfilling you and not fulfilling someone else? Are you doing it out of obligation or, whatever that? So, because that's going to fill me up regardless. I can do this and it does not have to be my income. I'm working on it. Obviously, I want to do it as much as I can because it fulfills me. But if it doesn't, I'm okay with it. I'm at peace with it. It's not a make or break. So having said that, I just wanted to say, people, the book Dear Gratitude is coming out the same week as this. And to your Tammy's listeners, she's going to have a link there that is going to allow you to download. I think it's like the first 10% of the book. I want to give you a taste of the book or a nice chunk of the book. I would love for you to read it. And if you don't buy the book, that's completely fine. I just would like, if you'd like to read this and see if it's something you're interested in. Again, there's 50 people I wrote from all over the world about gratitude, and somewhere in there, you're going to get inspired. Somewhere in there, you're going to resonate. It's a great place for anybody to start, or somebody that's already been in their journey. They could look at it as a daily journal where they read an essay a day. There's a bunch of ways to pick this up.
Yeah.
It's very accessible. So I thank you, Tammy.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for being here, Chris. Everything that we've talked about here, links, all the resources will be in the show notes, will be in my weekly email as well. So, Chris, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you almost sounds trite compared to all that we've talked about, but I really do thank you.
Oh, well, no, really, thank you. I mean it sincerely. This is what I love talking. You completely filled me up. We already told you why.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Chris Palmore. It was so interesting to speak with him and learn about his professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources or links mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them on the blog page of my website at www.tammygoulerloeb.com. And just look for episode 101. Are you thinking about what your next professional move is going to be? Perhaps there was a thought or idea that was sparked by listening to today's podcast that you'd like to put into motion in your life. Or perhaps you're feeling a little stuck. Get specialized group and individualized support, insights, and accountability from a brilliant mix of professional women in a safe, non-judgmental, creative space. Join one of my small hybrid mastermind coaching groups starting on a rolling basis. Learn more at https://bit.ly/navigating career change. If you were inspired by this episode with Chris, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at www.tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.